there, and welcome back. This is Lauren Kimball for ANI 245, and we are in the home stretch on our tutorial series for animating a basic walk cycle in Maya. Now here's just kind of giving you a little taste of what we're going to ultimately go for moving forward. In our first tutorial, we went over how to basically do the foot placements using IK handles, and then we moved on in the second set of tutorials to animate the hips and the torso and to introduce concepts like animation layers. Now we're going to move on to the arms, and in this particular instance we're going to be animating one arm using forward kinematics and the other using inverse kinematics so that you can see the strengths of utilizing both of those systems. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a step back from this end result and open up a prior save. So when last we left off, we had done a little bit of polishing on the feet, and I also introduced you to some of these extra controllers. These controllers here can be found by clicking on the gear, like this large gear icon, and going into the channel box and looking for secondary controls visibility. I'm going to go ahead and turn them off for the time being, but after we're done animating the arms, I'm going to revisit these so we can talk about how you can utilize them to refining some of the snappiness that happens in the legs. Again, this is going to be very typical when you're animating with IK. We'll revisit why that is at a later time, but for now, suffice to say that these tweak controls can come in handy when refining your animations. Now, there are a few things that I want to do before we jump in. Like before, I like to set up my workspace. I like to make sure that I have my controls that I'm going to be animating at the ready. This time I want to go ahead and create a couple more display layers. I don't want to just deal with one master control layer because at this point we've been working in so many different sets of controls, whether it be the feet and knees, or working with the hip or the torso, and now we're about to start introducing the arms. So I'm going to begin by going over to my display layer, which is right next to the animation layer. Right now I have this default layer, which you can't really select or maneuver because it's referenced in from the original Delta rig, and I also have my layer that I added in the previous tutorials that just has the controls in it. I'm going to take this controls layer and just bump it up. It's not going to let me. That's a nuisance. Well, when I create some more layers it should let me, so let's just create some new layers, shall we? So the first layer that I want to create, and I'm just going to start with this button, which is create a new layer with no additional assets inside it. I'm going to have this first layer be feet and knees, and I'm going to also color code it. That way it's just easier to identify more readily. I'm then going to click on the controls and hopefully, yay, now we can actually move these. I don't know why it was being difficult before. So this is the main controls. This is the one that we made last time when we were trying to basically separate some of the controls from the rest. I'm just going to choose a random color. Let's go ahead and go over here and tap Alt2. For the feet and the knees, I'm just going to grab these two controllers here and my two knee pole vector controllers. Right click, add selected objects. I'm going to go ahead and turn my other controller on so that I can see the, well actually I guess I don't need it yet. Let's go ahead and create another new layer. This one will be torso and hips. And let's just choose color, grab the controls we want, right click, add selected objects, and we can turn that off. And the next one that I'm going to want is going to be my arms, and I'm only going to choose the arm controller on the right side for the moment, and make sure that they are on FK. So in previous tutorials I had walked you through how to do the FK-IK switch. If for some reason you might have glanced over that, I'm going to go ahead and revisit it with you right now. So by default, Delta's arms and legs are usually set to IK, which is inverse kinematics. That's where you grab a controller and it basically moves the rest of the joints in a chain, kind of like a puppet string. Ideally, when we're animating the arms, I like to work in FK, forward kinematic. So to make that switch, you need to have access to this gear over here, and you're going to look for the corresponding controls for that arm. So this is the left arm, and you'll notice that the controllers are in blue. You're going to click on the little corresponding image here in this sort of cog image. And when you click on it, you're going to see all of the attributes that go with that arm. And right now, we got visibility, switch, IK, FK, switch. Switch is what we're looking for. Right now it's set to 1. Basically, when you design these attributes as a rigging artist, you can put any number of things in these attribute boxes like on, off, or specific words. Like down here on the IK follow space, it says spine and chest, and if I click this, there's some other options. In this instance, and in a lot of instances, they typically just go with 0 and 1, which indicates on and off. Or in this instance, it's going to be IK0, FK1. So right now the switch is set to 1, which means it's the FK, but if I were to set it to 0, it would go back to IK. So if you are looking at your character and it still has the IK out and about, then you want to go back into this arm and you want to go to the IK-FK switch and you want to switch it back to FK, because FK is where we want to deal. Alright, when that's done, I'm going to press Alt-2 to hide my character's skin. Makes it easier to select these joint controls. And I want to grab 4 of them. I want to grab the wrist, and you can tap Q if you don't want to have the move tool in your way. So W, E, and R are dealing with translate, rotation, and scale. If you press Q, it's just general selection. So I'm grabbing that first controller, holding down Shift, grabbing the second controller where the elbow would be, the third one closer to the shoulder, and then this fourth controller which really is the shoulder. So this is more like the top of your humerus, and this is going to control the shoulder. So I've got 4 controllers selected. I'm going to go ahead and click on this button on the far right, which is to create a new layer with selected assets. Double click it, and we're just going to go ahead and name it, I just call it arms for now, even though there's only 1 arm in it for right now. But eventually there's going to be more than 1 arm in there. But for now, to make it less confusing, we'll just name it arm. And then we'll just choose a color. Let's go with green and save. And now when I turn off controls, I can still see my left arm's forward kinematic chain. I don't want to worry about the fingers at the moment, or the head, or the other arms controllers. We're going to go ahead and start with the left arm. Cool. Now that we've got that sorted, I'm going to go ahead and bring Delta back. And I want to also, before we jump in, now we've got some display layers so that controls are more readily accessible, but I also have a few buttons that I want to add to our shelf up here. Now before, just as a quick review, when I wanted to add a feature to my shelf, I would find the feature, like for example the motion trail menu. If I go over here to visualize, mind you, you have to have this tab set correctly if you want to see visualize. If you have it preset to modeling, you're not going to see visualize because it's, strictly speaking, it's an animation feature, not a modeling feature. So Maya organizes these top boxes based on what you're wanting to do, and so you got to make sure it's set to animation. Fun fact, if you hold down spacebar, this activates your Hotbox, and your Hotbox has everything. So these are all the modeling tools, the tools that would pop up under the modeling tab, the rigging tab, the animation tab. There's visualize right there. You can also customize your Hotbox by clicking on Hotbox controls, and you could say, hey, I only want you to show animation only. And now when I press spacebar, only the animation Hotbox will appear. I can go back in here and say show all. So there's a couple ways to access it. Anyway, if you're accessing it from the top of the screen, make sure this is preset to animation. And then what you're going to want to do is go to visualize, and there's our motion trail editor. To add it to our shelf, we just hold down Shift and Control and click, and it will add it to our shelf. We then right-click and edit so that we can go in and make any custom adjustments, like maybe we want to add a label, maybe we want to change the color, maybe we want to change the icon. All right, so not everything has to be done that way. Obviously, another method that you're familiar with is if there was something very specific on my rig that I wanted to add, for instance. Like, let's say I wanted to right-click select objects on my arm. So let's say I wanted a button for my arm controllers. Then I would go over here to create sets, quick select set, and then add it to my shelf. So there's the review. There is another way to add buttons that is exceptionally helpful to know, because not everything has a button that's listed in a port, like in one of these little subshelves. So an example of one of those would be under the animation shelf. There is, of course, the motion trail editor, which when I click it, it opens this up on another screen. But what if I just wanted to throw on a motion trail without opening up that menu? Because that's an extra step. If I open up the motion trail editor, then I've got to click Create Motion Trail. What if I want to immediately create a motion trail for, I don't know, my wrist, for instance? There's a button right here for it. The motion trail selected objects to generate a motion trail over the time. Boom. When I click it, it immediately adds that motion trail. But if I wanted to add that to my shelf, I've got to have this shelf selected to add it, and it doesn't exist as a standard option in the drop-down menu. So how to get to it? Well, first I'm going to get rid of this, just delete it. And what I want to do is open up something called the script editor. The script editor lives in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's down here. It looks like a semicolon flanked by 2 parentheses. Click that, and this opens up. The script editor is basically a log that tells you everything that you've been doing in Maya. If I scroll up, every command that I've made, every time I've opened Maya, every time I've saved something, it's all stored right here in the script editor until I close out of Maya, open up a new scene, or I can manually go up here to the 5th button from the left, the one that has looks like a top menu with an X, and I can wipe it. So that clears the history. And then down here, this would be my input window. So if I wanted to put in some code and launch it, I can also clear whatever I type down here in this button. The 3rd button clears both at the same time. So why am I showing you this? Well, remember that when I went over here and clicked on animation, clicked on the wrist, and said, hey, I just want a quick, fast motion trail. Boom. Look what happened inside the script editor. First off, when I selected that controller, a little bit of code popped up, and then this popped up, Create Motion Trail. That is the command that I want. That is the command that is activated when I click that button. So I'm going to go over here to my Delta shelf. I'm going to click the highlighted text, and I'm going to drag it onto my shelf. It's going to ask me, hey, do you want to save this as Python or Mel? MelScript is the standard script language in Maya, but you can also program in Python. I'm going to say, hey, I want this to be Mel. And now I've got a button here, and let's test out this button. I'm going to delete this motion trail from my outliner. I'm going to click on the wrist again, and now I'm going to click the new button. And voila. It instantly creates a motion trail without having to go into the motion trail editor. All right, so let's customize that button now that we've created it. I'm going to click on the motion trail that it generated and just delete it. And then I'm going to go up to my new button. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to click edit. And so there's the command that it created, the one that I dragged from my script editor. I'm going to go to shelves, and for the icon, let's go with motion. Oh, I got press enter, that helps. There's motion blur, motion path. There you go, motion trail. Looks a little different from the motion trail editor. Select, and let's call this let's call this M trail. I know there's already one called M trail, but we can go over here to the motion trail editor and change it to MT editor. And then back over here, M trail, and save all shelves. And so now I've got my extra button. Now I want to do this again, so let's actually bring back the script editor. Again, to access the script editor, bottom right hand corner. And I'm going to go ahead and clear my history out. And I'm going to go to my graph editor. And one of the things that I know I'm going to want in advance that kind of gets on my nerves is if I have an animation. So I'm going to have to click on something that has an animation to it. So I'm thinking, let's go back to the feet. Grab one of these feet controls. All right. So notice that I can see my infinity curves on these feet, which we activated in a previous tutorial. Let's go over here. I'm going to go, if you don't see your infinity curves, remember you can just go to View and click on Infinity. If you see them flat on both sides, that just means that they're set to constant and not cycle. What I want is, so by default, when you animate, it's always going to be constant, meaning that when something is constant, the inputs before a key are flat, and the inputs from the last key onward are flat, meaning that whatever the last value is what's repeated. And in this instance, when I'm working on a cycle, I want these to be preset to infinity so that I can offset and refine my cycle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here I'm going to clear out my script editor. I'm going to go to Curves, Post Infinity, Cycle. And there is the Post Infinity cycle code. I'm also going to go to Curves, Pre-Infinity, Cycle. So now I have my pre and my post. I'll start with the pre, and I'm just going to drag it over. Now, I'm going to go with my Post Infinity, set it over, Mel. And my third one, I'm going to make a third button. I'm going to grab both of these and drag them together. Mel. So now I have, if I were to take one of these channels, let's just go with Translate Y. All right, let's say I was going to go in and set this to constant. Curves, pre-infinity, constant. Also probably a good feature to have. I'm going to add that to my shelf too. But if I grab this and I click on the first button, you can see that it makes my pre-infinity cycle. When I click on the button after it, it makes it post-infinity. If I click the fourth button that I've created, it sets it back to constant, and the third button sets it to pre and post-infinity. All right, let's go ahead and customize those buttons real quick. So I'm going to right-click on the first button, and I'm going to click Edit, and this one is the pre-infinity. So let's go over here and start with the icon. Should be an infinity curve. Maybe it's cycle. I know there's an icon. Yep, there's cycle. Nope, those are not the ones I want. I'm surprised there's not one for infinity. I know that there is. There's ones for some basic curves, not what I'm looking for. Let's type in post. There we go, post infinity. I knew that it existed somewhere. Let's go with pre-infinity. Cool. Select. And let's change this to pre and just like little indicators, like just put them in abbreviated form. So pre.infinity. And save. So now I've got my pre-infinity button. And again, just making sure that it definitely did that right. Click on pre-infinity, and only pre-infinity turns on. Excellent. And then that's my post. So let's right-click and edit the post-infinity cycle. Start with button, and let's type in post. Post-infinity. There we go. Select. And for the icon label, let's go with post and save. All right, so I don't know that there is a button or an icon for both post and pre-infinity. So let's just see what pops up. Let's go back to pre. So technically this is the icon for pre-infinity cycle offset, but let's use it just because it's a different icon and I don't want to be here all day. So we'll just use that for the time being. So we'll say post pre-inf. Save. It's a little hard to read on the icon. Let's icon width. I don't want to change. We'll keep it automatic. I don't want to go too crazy with it. Let's just change this to post and pre. There, I can see both of them a little better. All right, let's go over here, edit the last one, and we're going to change this to constant. It's not what it's meant for, this constant drag, but let's go for it anyway, because again, don't want to be here all day. So I'll use the constant drag icon, and I'll just change the icon label to constant. Save all shelves. I think one more thing that I want to do, going back to the shelf editor, is I want to create another divider. So I should be able to... It just creates a new item. I don't know that I'm able to duplicate them per se. Yeah, maybe I am, but I don't know what that is offhand. So I'm just going to create a new one, and I'll call it divider. And I'll have it do what the previous divider did. So it's got the default icon, and for button background, let's change that. Custom background color. Choose one of these light grays, and we're going to do a custom length and set it to 2. It's a little bit, yeah, that works. Alright, so I'm going to grab this divider and I can actually force it this way so you can see how it moves down this shelf, and now I've got this nice little divider that stands between my, oh, I want to go one further. Boop. There we go. So I got delete static channels, the motion trail editor, the motion trail path, and now I've got these infinity curve buttons. If you feel so inclined, you could go ahead and create one more divider, which I'm going to go ahead and do just to sort of review it. So icon width, I want to go with custom and I want to set it to 2. And icon label color, I want to change the background color. And go with that light gray again, and then I want to take this divider and move it there. So now it's at the very end of my little section here for the infinity curves. With that taken care of, let's move forward with animating the arm. I'm going to start by making sure that I have my other control layers off. I'm just going to ignore, obviously, the one that comes with the Delta rig that was referenced in, but these other ones, we'll make sure they're shut off. I'm then going to want to go in and grab my arm controllers. Now I could do this the more traditional way, where I press Alt-2 and then just grab the controllers. But just another side note, you can actually click the layer that has the controls in it, the arm layer, right click and select objects, and that's another way that you could select assets if you've got them within their different layers. Alright, so what's important is that we got these selected. I'm going to go over here to animation layers, and I'm going to click on the far right button, which is create a layer from selected. Double click it, and I'm going to call this my, let's see, that's left arm, I think. Left arm. I don't know if it lets me do underscores actually. Oh, it does. Cool. Lovely. Also, another thing that I sometimes do is I sometimes lock the base animation. What's beneficial with this is that sometimes when I click on different controllers, which I'm not going to do because I turned them off, but if I hadn't have turned them off, sometimes grabbing another controller while working can make you jump into a different layer where you are animating on one layer and didn't realize you jumped back to base. So sometimes I like to just lock the layer to prevent that from happening. Alright, so I've got my left arm selected and I'm going to get ready to start animating. To begin with, I'm going to click on this FK controller that's closest to the torso, because I just want to lower her arm down because it's just kind of like sticking out like crazy. Let's go with the whole number, -30. Yep, that looks good. Alright, so the first thing that I want to animate isn't actually this arm. If I just had her arm swinging back and forth like this, there is a rigidity that's very unnatural. If you were to watch a reference, so like let's look at a reference of a person walking, you'll note that there is a lot of upper body movement happening around the chest because there is a clavicle bone that is moving alongside that shoulder socket, and so you want to remember that and incorporate it into your animation. Now, something that I should have done earlier, but it just sort of slipped my mind, I'm going to go back to my display layers. I'm going to go over here to the controllers layer, which has all the controllers that aren't assigned to any of the other display layers. And I'm going to turn off her hood because her hood gets in the way of selecting these shoulders controls, and it's just a nuisance for the time being. So if you click on the head and this little cog, this little icon down here, if you grab the head, you're going to want to go over into the attributes and turn off her hood. So we got hood rig. Those are the visuals for her controllers that are already off, and this is for the geometry. So we just type in the word off, and when we zoom back out, her hood is gone, and these controllers are no longer being obscured by that hood. Let's turn off the controller and get back to our animation layer. Alright, so we want to start with animating this shoulder. Now there are a couple of features here. I can translate the shoulder, which I don't like doing. I usually only translate joints if I have to. I typically try to treat it just like I would a regular human body and just rotate things. So let's do that. I'm thinking let's begin by starting at frame 1. So here we are, frame 1. And when we are animating a typical arm, oops, when I did that it snapped right back. Interesting. I say interesting because I didn't realize these had keys on them yet. Key selected. Oh, whoops. I'm accidentally in the wrong channel. I want to be up here in the, not the shoulder, I want to be up here in this top bone. -30. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So anyway, where was I? Oh, right. So I want to begin by looking at where my legs are happening. So when an arm is moving as a counter action, also, by the way, I don't know if I narrated what I just did, but when I started moving her, her arm shot back out. So I just grabbed this top controller, moved it back to -30 and keyed it. So it's got a key on frame 1. That's all I did. Anyway, back to shoulder. What I want to start with is I want to think about the relationship of the arms to the legs. Now, when we look at Richard Williams' book, we can see that there is a really clear and super exaggerated example of what the arms are doing in conjunction with the legs. Generally speaking, they are working as a counterbalance, meaning that when your left leg steps forward, then your right leg is going to act as a counterbalance and move forward as well. Now, what's really cool about these illustrations from Richard Williams' book is you can also see that the widest point where the arms are furthest apart is when you're hitting the down pose. So it's not the same as when the legs are furthest apart. So the most extreme pose for the legs is the contact, but it is not the most extreme for the arms. Why that is relevant is it tells you that the arms are probably going to be operating a beat behind the legs because they are not the main driver. The legs are the main driver. Okay, but for right now, while we're starting the animation, because we can offset it later, much like we did the rib cage. So for now, let's just animate it on beat. So we've got the contact pose, which is the furthest point. So we're animating the shoulder, and the shoulder rotating forward and back is going to be on the y-axis. So let's go ahead and let's try 5. Let's start with 5. So we're going to go 5, and I'm going to set a key. And then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to set another key using Alt-I, which, remember, Alt-I is only going to key the active channel that I'm working in. And I'm going to go to 13. So we're working rotate X, tap F. I'm not seeing it. There it is. Just had to refresh it by re-clicking on the layer. Alright, so, or am I rotate Y? Okay, I'm in rotate Y. Okay, so I'm in rotate Y, and I've got it set to 5 and 5, and let's go to frame 13, which is the other contact pose, and type in -5. Alright, and so this is what we're starting with. Now that is going to get really distracting, but what's a great thing about working in animation layers is we can just go over here and turn off the torso and the pelvis. And when we do that, because we did all of that animation on those layers, we're dealing mostly with the legs. There's still some animation happening on that side-to-side action from the main root controller, but we've basically isolated the other stuff. So that can be helpful. Alright, cool. So now that I've got that going, let's go ahead and start animating the upper arm. And I'm going to want to animate that on the y-axis as well. Virtually all this is going to be the y-axis. I could do some other stuff, but we're trying to keep this as simple as possible for the time being. So let's see here. How about maybe 10? Start there. Start at 10. Key selected. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, kind of getting a vibe for how far I want to swing it. Go over here and do Alt-I again. And it did not listen to me. Well, we'll just key select it that way. Let's go back over here. And we're just going to move this forward some. Now, when we look at a more realistic reference of a walk, we note that the arms don't the upper arm doesn't really travel that far outside of the body. So let's just kind of, if you look at it from a side view, oh, it's not a very good side view. Let's see. It's going to give us a bit more of a sense of things. That might be way too exaggerated. Let's dial that down a bit. Instead of -30, let's do -10. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. Instead of 10, what if we did 5? 0? I mean, typically you wouldn't do 0, but remember that our character is already bent forward. Let's go with 2.5. Okay, so we got 2.5 here, and I'm going to go over here and make it 2.5 at that end. And over here, looks like it's set to -22. Let's go with -20. Alright, rewind it and press play. Alright, good start. And we're keeping an eye on our curves. Right now, it's not a big deal because these are beginning and ending in flattened tangents, so you can't really mess those up. We don't necessarily need to make these cycle at this point, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. So I grab my shoulder controller, and I'm going to click on the third button, which makes them infinity on both sides, and I'll do the same thing here, grabbing that first joint at the top of my arm and make it pre and post infinity as well. And now let's move down to my lower arm. Now, what's interesting about the lower arm is it's kind of a form of drag. So at this point, let's just throw a key down at this point. Let's just go to rotate Y and key selected, and we'll go to the very end. Yep, Alt-I is working again, thank goodness. 13. Okay, so at 13, over here is fine where it's like fully extended, because remember that your elbow is a hinge joint. So even though Delta here can rotate her arm in very unusual methods, you want to try and keep in mind anatomically that the joint here at the elbow and the joint down here at the knee can only bend one way. The reason it seems like she can bend multiple ways is because there's two bones, not like on the rig, but as a human being, we have two bones in our lower arm that rotate around each other, the radius and the ulna. And so any sort of rotation you're going to want to capture here in the wrist and just keep this to, collapsing forward. So for our first pose, as she's starting to come forward, it's okay for this just to be rigid because that's where the joint ends. When we get to 13, she's probably going to want to collapse her arm a bit. So I'm thinking that's a bit too extreme. -30 is really extreme. Don't want it to be too over the top. Let's go with -10. I think that'll work. Press F to frame my animation. Alright, cool. Now, I want to find the halfway mark. So we got our contact, 1, 2, 3, that's down, 1, 2, 3. This is where passing would be. So I'm going to go ahead and add a key here. And I'm going to do it again over here. So 1, 2, 3, this would be our down, 1, 2, 3, this would be our other passing pose. And the reason I'm doing that is as her arm is swinging forward at this halfway mark, I'm going to go ahead and break the joint. So breaking the joint is an animation concept. Basically means that even though as animators we understand that the arm only opens and closes at the elbow like a hinge, most people don't know that. Most people don't think about that. So you can break the joints. Sometimes you can get away with massive breakage, like with the rubber hose animation that you see people like Up-E-Work specialize in. Other times you're going to go with something a lot more subtle. And you can get away with it, and it just adds a nice sense of drag. Look at that nice sense of drag that's coming from that. And then it's going to catch up with itself over here. And then it's going to start coming back down. And as it comes back down, it's probably going to bend more this way. Let's go with -15. Because if this one is set to -10, we're going to have it bend a little bit more, and then it catches up with itself. It's very extreme. I think I want to dial down this bending. It was just more for the sake of showing what was happening there. So let's go in here and change it to, I don't know, 10. I'm trying to keep it a little more subtle. So it's still there. You can still feel that bend, but it's not rubber hosey. Alright, let's take a look at what's going on with our graph editor. I'm going to go ahead and click on this button up here so that we have it cycling. And this is where it's really important to check your post cycle. So first I notice that there's a flattened tangent where this should be flowing a lot more like a spline. There's no reason for the arm to slow down right here. I mean, I guess there is. Yeah, I say there probably is. So if she's slowing down right here, it would be because it's changing direction. So yeah, we could have it be flattened, actually. Oh, no, not auto. I want to go ahead and go for flat. I guess it could. Oh, what is it doing? There we go. That does make sense to have it be flattened. I just don't like it. Alright, let's see. Yeah, I think it's fine. Alright, let's go ahead and go with the wrist. And the wrist is going to be like an extra level of drag. So let's go ahead and just set a key. I did not listen. Let's try again. Key selected. There we go. Over here, Alt-I. And then at 13, Alt-I. So I'm thinking maybe about there. Actually, maybe just, I feel like this is going to start dragging back this way a bit. So let's go with 4. And I'll make sure 25 is set to 4 as well. And for 13, let's go with -4. Alright, I'm going to go to 7, because remember that's where the halfway point is between these two. This is where the passing's happening. And since the hand is going forward, let's just go ahead and add a bit of bend there. I know it looks a little funny because we haven't set the fingers, but let's just rotate that back. It looks like it's set to 17. Let's go with 15. And I'm going to go to frame 1 and rotate the hand a little. Let's see how. Yeah. There we go. Something like 25. And just to keep it in that pose, I'm going to right click and key, even though we're not going to add any other animation on that. I just wanted to kind of start getting that rotation in so that it's not like facing fully to the side. Usually when you're walking, your hand is kind of, actually probably could go further than this, kind of like this, you know, like you're usually when you're walking, it's not like you're looking at the back of the hand straight on, but it's more angled, as you can see from the reference. So let's do 45. Okay. Cool. So let's get back over here. So we got a bit of drag, and this time we're still dragging on the y-axis. So I know it looks a little silly. Maybe we should dial down the x so it doesn't feel so. Let's go to 30, and we're still doing y as our drag. Okay. I accidentally play blasted. Let me undo that. Okay. Drag forward, and then we want to drag it back. So at 19, it's going to be a little over exaggerated. Let's see here. Let's do -10. Maybe -15. Maybe a little bit more than that. Oh, that looks ridiculous. What is going on? Oh, I accidentally added some keys here. So I want to change this to like 30. And I want to delete any other keys. Gotta be careful when I'm doing this that I don't accidentally key on the wrong layer, because it's causing a jitter. I don't like that dramatic stop on the rotate Y. So what I was going to do to the upper arm, I'm definitely going to do to the arms, to the hand, which is There we go, F, that's what I was looking for. I'm going to go ahead and soften this. Let's go ahead and activate this third button so that everything is cycling. And let's just take out some of that oops. This one needs to be flattened first. I'm going to take these two and I'm going to just, grab their handles. Goodness gracious, there we go. Just dial down some of that flattening so that it's a little bit softer. Let's press play. Oh, I like that better. I mean, that's just a personal preference, but I like it not stopping so abruptly. Still feels a little bit over the top, so I probably want to dial down some of that drag. So let's see where we're at on these. So maybe instead of 15, we could think about maybe 10, maybe over here. Let's set that to -10 as well. Alright, cool. I'm going to go ahead and save my progress. So I'm going to go File, Save Scene As, and let's just see if this is my 11th iteration, and we'll say left arm progress. Let's take a little break from animating the arm. We still got a bit more work to do on it. That was just generally getting the swing going. let's get this hand not looking so rigid. I'm going to go over to my display layers. I'm going to go ahead and activate her controls. And let's just relax that hand. I'm going to click on Q so I don't have all of those tools in front of me. Like usually I have rotate on so I can see like this tool in my way. Set Q. And start by just rotating this first joint. And then I can grab these two. Q helps. I'm grabbing two of them at the same time so that I can relax more than one. Kind of like Flying Fox. And I can do the same thing with the fingers. In fact, I could grab all the fingers and you can see that that's how you can get them to form a fist. I just want to relax them a little. There we go. Also maybe rotate these a little just to kind of add to that sense of being relaxed. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's turn off the controllers. I don't need to key any of that. It's just, that looks a lot less unnatural than before. Just to give the hand a nice pose. I think I might be out a little too much still. Probably overthinking it. Yeah, that'll work fine. So that's how you would relax the hand. Just go in and utilize more than one joint at a time. Not always. Sometimes you might just want to move one. But when you want to do a finger, like instead of just going one at a time and moving that joint, you can press Q and grab multiples and then maneuver them accordingly. Just makes life a little faster. All right. She is starting to come along. Let's go ahead and go to our animation layer and turn on her torso and her pelvis. Ooh, that really exaggerated that arm swing more. I definitely want to dial back some things now that there's that extra level of rotation involved. So let's take a look at what we got going on here. Graph editor. I kind of like the forward swing. I think it's more the back because, like from our reference, you're not going to see a lot. The arm doesn't usually go past the back. So let's just change that to 0 like I had it before. That's not too bad. It's going to look better with the offset. So I'm going to go over here and right click, select all my joints, and I'm going to go to my graph editor, and I'm going to make sure that everything has definitely been given its post and pre-infinity set. I'm not worried about these kind of anchor frames, so like this was for putting the arm down, and I think this was for twisting the wrist. I'm mostly focused on these. And so the notion is that when our character is in her contact pose, that is when the arms are the most furthest, or that's when her legs are the furthest apart. That's the extreme for the legs. And frame 4, when we're at our down, this is when it's most extreme for the arms. So we keyed it so that the arms were furthest apart on frame 1, and we need that to start at frame 4. So I'm going to hold down Shift, middle mouse click, and just drag this over so that our first key starts right there at 4. And then I've got to go over here to the beginning, and I've got to set a key. So hopefully Alt-I definitely seems to have done the trick. And let's do that again over here at 25, Alt-I. I want to make sure that I get rid of this. This is like extra baggage left over. And I want to go through each of these and make sure that it's behaving. So over here, this is the rotate Y for that upper arm. And we did want the cushioning in there. It looks a little funky with those peaks, but we definitely wanted it to have a sense of slowing down as the arm was changing direction. So that works nicely. Next one. All right. Make sure that, see with this arm changing direction, you could also keep the cushioning. I think instead I'm going to just go flat on both of these. So we're in the, we're in the hand. No, we're not. What is this? Oh, it's because I had multiple things selected. So this one was the elbow that I had up here that had cushioning, and down here is the hand. I didn't want cushioning in the hand. Alright, so I'm going to grab both of these because I like the smoother playback. Let's go make sure this is cycling nicely. This is the shoulder, and this is the arm. Actually, this might be the shoulder right here, because they're both called shoulder. So this is like the main shoulder, and then this one is called the FK shoulder. Nothing confusing about that at all. Alright, so I think everything's cycling well. Let's press play. Oh, that looks so much better to have that offset. Alright, so once you're done, if you want to dial it back more, remember that because this is an animation layer, you can change the weight of the layer. If I wanted to, I could set this to like 0.5. Oh, I see what happened. So that is something that needs to be taken care of. Alright, let me explain. When I set this to 0.5, it also put to 0.5 that anchor frame that I put in. So over here on the rotate Z, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So now when I press play, oh, maybe that wasn't the right one. I'm going to undo it. Where am I at? Okay, so here we are. We're in the main controller. So let's just go through manually. There's nothing on X, there's nothing on Y, or there's something on Y, and there's nothing on Z. Cool. Over here, that's what I'm looking for. I want this rotate Z to be gone, so I'm just going to delete it. Now there should be no keys on the rotate Z, and I want to do the same thing with the wrist. So this was originally set to 30. I think they're both set to 30. Okay. So now when I rewind and play it, of course they're just sort of staying there now without the anchors. Cool. But when I set this down, I don't want that to be the case. So I'm going to go into the wrist and I'm going to set this to 0. And I'm going to set this arm over here to 0. And I'm going to turn off this animation layer. And I'm going to go back to my base layer and unlock it. So I'm definitely in base. And I'm going to go over here on the base layer. And this is where I'm going to put my rotation down. So -30. And then I think this was rotated this way to 30. Cool. So now that's on the base layer. And why that's important is when I come back up here to my left arm, it doesn't listen. I love that. I love that it's not listening. That's great. Oh, it's because it was unmuted. Or, I'm sorry, I accidentally muted this. That's why I did that. Okay, so now when I press play, great. If I dial this down, No, it's not doing what I wanted it to do. Mute this, go back to base animation. I may just have to set a key then on the base animation layer. I think there's no getting away from it. I probably should have set this pose before I put it in an animation layer, but we will troubleshoot it. Let's go over here, set this to 30. Oops. Negative 30, right. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to key selected. And so now I have that key on the base animation layer. And let's do the same thing on the wrist. I want this to be at 30 on the x-axis. Right click, key selected, and it's on the base animation. So when I lock up base animation, I unmute and come back to left arm. And I can up this. Oh! Okay, another explanation. This did not go back to what I asked it to originally. Set that back to 0 on rotate Z and set this back to 0. Okay. Oh, goodness gracious. Alright. I've got to set a key, it seems. It's so silly. Alright, key selected. And go back over here and set this to 0. Alright, there we go. So when I turn this off, it goes back to negative 30. Lovely. Is it because I have this set to override? And that doesn't matter if it's set to override. I want it to be additive. Oh my goodness. I love making issues for myself. I'm going to change that back. I was just troubleshooting. So it seems that I need to get that arm all the way down. I've got to go ahead and key something other than 0 here. I think I just need to have this set to negative 30 as well. Oh, there we go. Key selected. And then on that wrist, let's set that to 30. What a headache. Alright, sorry for that. When I first animated her, I had set her arm before adding it to the animation layer, and I should have done that. But on the bright side, now you guys got to see what could possibly go awry with animation layers. So let me explain. I'm going to turn off the arm. I don't turn it off, but mute it. And now in the base animation layer, I set a key so that the upper arm is at negative 30 on the z-axis and the wrist is 30 on the x-axis, so that the arm's basically bent down and that the wrist is slightly rotated toward us. Okay? Now, originally I had it happen on this layer. The reason that I don't want that on that layer is because if I dial this down, then her arm slowly rises, and we don't want that. So we want it to be on the base animation. Now, when I activated this, her arm shot through her chest, and that's because it was taking, it still remembered that that arm was set to negative 30, okay? And so if this arm was negative 30, and then I had negative 30 here, and this left arm is set to additive, so I go to layer mode, there's additive and override, I had it set to additive, so it's adding on top of the original animation. So what it effectively did was it doubled itself. So I went back into the left arm layer, and how I fixed that was I went on the left arm layer and I just made sure that the values matched. So this left arm here has that negative 30 keyframed on it, and the wrist has the 30 keyframed on it so that it matches. So now when I press play, everything is working like it should, and if I dial back the animation on her arm, it doesn't cause the arm to fly upward or fly inward. So I can manually decide to make this a less extreme animation, or I can have it go back up to normal. Also, there's a button here. It says letter K. You can actually key the weight. So the moment I click that, it'll create a weight channel on the layer so that you can actually, maybe there's some moments that you want to be fully, full weight, and other moments you don't. So just know that you can also animate this asset. All right, I'm going to go ahead and press Ctrl Save and save my work, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so now that that's done, let's go ahead and address the other arm. If I were animating this in such a way that both arms were just following the action of the legs like a normal walk would, then when I keyed this arm at its extreme on 1 and then the opposite on 13 and then back again at 25, I would do the opposite with this arm. So when this arm is fully back, this arm would be front and vice versa, just like I did with the legs. So, and when I was done and finished refining the curves, I would offset them. But I want to do something a little more fun. So in K-pop Demon Hunters, there's a scene in the song How It's Done where the main protagonist is walking toward the villains, and she's got her sword chilling on her shoulder while she's walking toward them, just really nonchalantly. And I thought that we could do something kind of similar here as a really fun exercise for showing you the strengths of, or a situation of using an IK over an FK setup. So what I love about the FK setup is that you get this really clean control. And that clean control over all the joints allows for better overlapping action, better follow through. Whereas IK, sometimes the overlapping action can get a little skewed. That's part of what leads to the knee popping situation, which we'll address in a later tutorial. It's that when you're only controlling everything from one point, it sort of leaves some things up to chance, and you get breaks in arc, for example. Anyway, FK is really great for arms, for getting that nice overlapping swing. IK is really great if you want the arm to stay put. So let's go over to the display layers and grab the controls. Just turn on the control layer, and I'm going to go over here and click on the red arm so that I can see the attributes that are attached to the right arm. So let's go look here at the IK-FK switch and set this back to 0. Boom. And now when I press play, notice how the arm just stays put. That is the strength of the IK. So if this were FK, then it would be moving along, following the shoulders. But with the IK, this hand wants to be wherever the controller is, and every joint therein is going to basically align itself to follow and track that controller. Okay? So let's begin this little exercise by taking the hand and the elbow out of the control layer. So I'm going to press Alt-2, and again, I don't want to grab all the little finger joints, I just want to grab this main IK joint, hold down Shift, grab the elbow, we're going to right click the controls group, and we're going to remove those objects. Boom. There we go. They've been removed. And now I'm going to go ahead, rename this layer Arms, and I'm going to add these two controls to the layer. So now they're all in the Arms layer together. Wonderful. Now, the fun part. We're going to give her a sword. Where will you get a sword, you might be wondering? Well, Maya has a few default assets that come with the software. To access them, you want to go over here to Windows, and you're going to scroll past the editors, past the outliner, all the way down to something called the content browser. If you're working on a much older version of Maya, this was originally called the visor. Now it's the content browser. So I'm going to click on the content browser and drag it over. And you'll see that there are just some default models that come with it, and some default clothes, some default props, weapons. And of the weapons, I'm going to click on the katana, just drag it in, and now we have a katana in our scene that our character can hold. I'm going to take the katana and rotate it and sort of start getting it into position. I can use my different orthographic views to kind of help me. Alright, looks like it's pretty darn close. Alright, at this point I'm probably going to turn off the arm and activate just the control layer so that I can see all of these controls that go with the hand. I'm going to rotate this so it's a little bit more angled this way. Alright, so let's see. It can be helpful to, if you have something that you can grab a hold of, like a pencil case or a stylus, and you kind of see how you would, grab it with your hand. It can kind of help give you a baseline for what you're doing. Maybe I'll put my arm on and rotate the hand. Oops, I want to grab the arm controller. So looking at the way my own hand operates, I think I want to start up here. Yeah, that feels right. So a lot of that positioning is going to happen over here at this topmost joint as opposed to where the thumb is. There we go. Cool. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but have some fun with it. Let's maybe bring this foot closer to the hilt. Alright, let's go ahead and try rotating some fingers around it. Oh, by the way, you can feel free to skip forward in the tutorial a bit. I have everything bookmarked if you don't want to sit here watching me get the character to hold the katana. I mean, you certainly don't have to imitate exactly how I do things, just... And it certainly doesn't have to be perfect, but have some fun with it. Let's turn off the controls. Well, that seems pretty close. I think that would hold up to some scrutiny. Alright, so once you have the sword in our hand, you want to go ahead and add a parent constraint. So remember that when you're doing constraints, you want to start with the parent first, then the child. So the best thing to parent to in this instance would be her IK controller itself. So we're going to click on the controller. We're going to then hold down Shift and click on the sword. We're going to go to the top of our screen and click Constrain and then select Parent. And so if you've done it successfully, you'll be able to click on the child and see that its channels, X and Translate and Rotate, are blue. That means that the Translate and Rotation channels are being constrained by something, i.e. the parent. So now when I move this, we have a with a character who now is armed with a katana, which is pretty fun. I'm going to rewind that because I don't want her walking out of pose from it. Yeah. I'm going to undo a bunch of stuff real quick. There we go. So she was in the up pose when I originally posted it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and say File, Save Scene As, and do a quick save of Constraint Sword. Alright, now let's go ahead and pose her with it. I'm thinking just resting the blade on her shoulder. Once you got that kind of positioned, you can use the elbows pull constraint controller to kind of relax that elbow down a little bit. There we go. Now, what's going to be really important is making sure that this is constrained correctly. Looks like the sword is moving out of the hand, which is unfortunate. I wonder why that happened. Well, let's go ahead and reconstrain. I'm going to grab the controller, grab the sword, constrain, and when I add a new parent, it doesn't necessarily add another constraint so much as it resets the constraint. So you'll notice down here that nothing's really been changed as far as like adding an extra section. So hopefully that fixes that. Let's try. Yeah, that does look a little bit better. Not perfect. There we go. I like that a little better. Grab this, constrain, and parent. Everything should be happy now. I want to go ahead and make sure that I have this following the correct thing. So what I mean by that is that when I press play, this is probably going to be aligning itself to the root controller. So here, let me show you what I mean. So even though it's definitely staying still, but it doesn't feel like she's walking with it. So what I want to do is make sure that this is following what I want it to. I'm going to go activate all the controllers, and I'm going to click on the right arm, and I'm going to ask the IK to follow something else. So currently, it's not following anything. Its IK follow is turned off, so let's turn it on. Alright, now it is following the chest. I want it to follow the right arm, the shoulder. So let's go back to frame 10, and let's turn off these controls, grab this, and move it back. Cool. And rewind and press play. And there we have it. I think I want to bring that up a little higher. Let me double check which. Okay, good. trying to think what would make a better silhouette. Well, now she's accidentally cutting into her neck. We don't want that. There you go. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's press play. Yeah. Alright, cool. And that is how you get your character to hold on to an asset while walking. So it's a lot easier once you've done all the hard work of getting the body to work correctly, because then the arm is just going to essentially, instead of sticking to the ground controller, the main global controller, it's following this shoulder blade. And since this shoulder blade is already rotating nicely because of the chest and the hips and the legs, it's all following together, which is awesome. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is turn her hood back on. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it's quite possible, because last time I did this, that, yep, the sword went right through the hood. So I would adjust the hood, or adjust the sword. I could do a different pose with the sword. Or I can also, just a fun tidbit, we can go over here and click on hood, like visual controls, just turn that on. And there are a series of controls. It's not perfect, but it can give us something to work with if we want to make some minor adjustments. I think we're going to need to do more than that. I think we're going to need to just move this sword back. Move her hand forward. And then maybe grab some of these controllers. It's not got a lot of flexibility, does it? She just looks more badass with the hood. Okay. Okay. No. There we go. Just had to rotate it, but now it's not quite touching the shoulder. Just gotta find that sweet spot where she's touching the shoulder, but also not messing with her hood. I think that might have done it. Yeah. Now she looks like a right proper assassin.